Hey friends. I started reading Nurtured by Love today, which is the title of Shin'ichi Suzuki's book, one of his books. He may have written other books. It's the one that sort of was recommended in another book as an opening understanding of how Dr. Suzuki thought about music education. And my, it's having an effect on me. I have to say, I had a feeling that that book was gonna be powerful. Even just the title, I spoke a little bit about this in my last video post, even just the title, Nurtured by Love, is such an amazing encapsulation of what music education and what the internalization of music does for a life, for a human being. And I'm only maybe 20 pages in, but the outgoing assumption is that the notion of innate musical talent is basically bunk, is basically to be ignored. He does a great, he does a beautiful job in the first couple of, like in the introduction and even the prologue, of just kind of like looking at what traits, what human capacities are actually present in a human being at the time of birth and in the first couple years of development. And essentially what he identifies as being innate traits and ways in which we can distinguish one human being from another is in their sensitivity and their capacity to adapt to their environment. All children have this. All children have a pretty high level of it initially, and most of the expression of those capacities comes down to what their early environment was like, what their parents did for them, what kind of a world their parents created around them at those early ages. And musical ability, something like musical skill, is entirely a function of adapting to the environment in which the child is being raised. If musical excellence, if a real appreciation of music and a love of music is around them, then they will adapt to that. They will adjust to that environment. They'll situate themselves within it. They'll move within it. They'll experiment within it. And this notion that children could be audited at an early age to see whether they have musical ability is just total nonsense. He has a great line at some point where he says, if a parent comes and asks, does my child have any musical ability, the proper thing to do would be to give the parent a test of musical aptitude, because that is going to determine that'll be way more accurate. There'll be a measurable thing there. In the child, there is no measurable thing yet. But in the parent, testing the parent will reveal the environment that the child is destined to grow up in, and that will tell you how that child is going to fare musically. And I have to say, that's something that I've found even in my teaching so far, which has clearly not been as extensive as Dr. Suzuki's, but in the handful of young people whom I have taught, their success, their thriving, their resistance, their challenges, almost it comes down from the moment the parent asks me to teach their child, I can almost tell you how it's going to go. I mean, truly from the first phone call, by the way the parent asks me whether I will teach their child, I can generally tell how it's going to go with the kid. Which, isn't that kind of scary? Like, isn't that, I guess in some cases it's kind of sad. In other cases, it might not be sad. It might be really encouraging. But it's remarkable to me how evident that is. How evident it is that the environment being created determines so much. And I'm not saying there isn't such a thing as sort of inborn musical genius. I mean, I've seen young prodigies up close. I've watched a 6-year-olds play concertos and Chopin etudes, and and I don't know what their cultivation was like at a young age. There's clearly something remarkable there. There's clearly something truly exceptional in the level and quality of information and skill that they've developed at a young age. But what is very clear to me, both from my own work as a teacher professionally and from my work with my daughter, and it's being affirmed by reading Dr. Suzuki's book, is that the being in the presence of a teacher, and especially in the presence of a master teacher, it's everything. There's this example where they take, it's a traditional practice in Japan, where they'll take a young bush warbler, which is like a bird that sings a certain kind of bird song. And they have this practice where every once in a while the bush warbler trainers will go get a young bush warbler who's just been hatched, still being raised by its parents, but they get it young enough that it's like just a couple of weeks old. And they bring it home and they teach it to be fed by humans. They let it kind of adjust to being raised in a human environment. And then they put it in the presence of a master bush warbler, a bird that's considered a master warbler that sings an exceptionally beautiful song. And that young bird, lo and behold, grows up to sing like the master bird. That's how it learns the language that it speaks. And there's a kind of cautionary tale, which is that if the young bird has been exposed to wild bush warblers before it gets, in other words, you have to do this early, because if it happens too late, if they've already kind of started hearing wild bush warblers, then when they go and meet the master, they don't pick it up. They already have kind of learned. Their brains have undoubtedly already been programmed. They have neural pathways, neural patterns that have taught them language before the kind of master song was able to make its initial imprint. And so you take a child at age, 5 or 6, and you say, well, they're tone deaf. Well, I wonder what they've grown up around. I wonder who's been singing to them. Who's been exposing them to music, right? What environment have they come from that at age 6, they could be considered tone deaf? That's clearly been imprinted upon them. And I think there's something really special about this feeling that it's all about love, that it's all about creating an environment. And you know, as I've spoken over the last couple of days and the last couple of years, you know, I think music is one of the most profound dimensions of human exploration. The number of capacities it draws on, the number, the different aspects of our being that are affected, that are involved in music making, or even just in music listening, it's remarkable. It is it affects our entire consciousness. And so, you know, reading this book, I can tell it's giving me even more kind of concrete, hopefully actionable principles to take my own teaching to the next level, to ground into my own mastery of music and really feel that in a deep way, even more than I do now, and to nurture my daughter through a loving process and through an effective process, a beautiful process. You know, Dr. Suzuki talks about how it's all about nurturing the heart. How someone comes along on violin or piano is important, and that's the working surface of the work. But there's a deeper level, and it's about the heart. It's about a whole human being arising out of the experience of this deep learning and being challenged by this deep learning. It has nothing to do with turning them into a musical prodigy or even an excellent musician. It's cultivating excellence as a human. And out of that arises musical beauty and musical expression. And the effect I'm having cannot be overstated. That's the other thing I'm taking away from this. The timbre of my emotional state as we practice is having an effect. What do I do about that? How do I understand that that's what I'm imparting? And stay with the fact that that's what I'm imparting. That's where I am today, folks. Appreciate you. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you again soon.